You don't lose focus because you're undisciplined. You lose it because distraction pays you in social safety, in perceived availability, in the quiet currency of not standing out. Most people think focus is a skill to build. It's not. It's a boundary to enforce, and 99% never do because they've been conditioned to believe that being always on is professionalism. But here's what no one says. Every time you answer a notification, scroll past your intention, or let ambient noise dictate your attention, you're not just wasting minutes. You're signaling to your brain that your highest thoughts aren't worth protecting. And that's not a productivity problem. That's a silent surrender of cognitive sovereignty. The top 1% don't fight distractions. They price them out of their lives because they know the real cost isn't measured in lost hours, but in the future selves they never become.
You are not just losing time when you get distracted. You are already making worse decisions, right now, because of a switch you made yesterday. Not 5 minutes ago, not this morning, yesterday. Because distraction does not vanish when you return to work. It lingers like smoke in a sealed room, odorless, invisible, but slowly poisoning your judgment. Picture this. A hedge fund analyst is modeling a high-stakes trade, deep in flow. Then a calendar reminder pops up, team sync in 10. She glances, just to acknowledge it. But her prefrontal cortex, command center for logic, risk calibration, and long-term consequence mapping, does not snap back. It is still half-anchored in that meeting room she has not even entered yet. For the next 45 minutes, her analysis carries a hidden bias. She overweights consensus, underweights outliers, and misses the anomaly that would have signaled a market inflection. She will not know it until weeks later, when the trade underperforms. And even then, she will blame volatility, not the 2-second glance that fractured her cognition. This is not anecdote. It is measurable. In controlled studies, professionals who switched tasks even briefly showed a 40% drop in diagnostic accuracy, a 28% increase in false pattern recognition, and a significant delay in accessing long-term memory during complex problem solving. Your brain is not multitasking. It is context switching under duress, and every switch degrades signal fidelity. Think of your attention like a laser. When it is focused, it can cut through steel, but every interruption scatters the beam, not just for a moment, but for minutes afterward. And unlike physical tools, you cannot see the degradation. You feel fine. You feel productive. But your output is running uncorrupted code. The elite do not rely on willpower to avoid this. They design their days like surgeons design operating rooms. Sterile, sequential, zero non-essential input. No email before noon. No open tabs. No quick checks. Because they know, focus is not about concentration. It is about cognitive continuity. And once that continuity breaks, you are not working with your best mind. You are negotiating with its ghost. So if the cost is this severe, why do brilliant people, CEOs, creators, strategists, still surrender to distraction daily? Because it is not really about notifications. It is about belonging. Distraction offers something far more seductive than novelty. Social proof that you are still in the loop, that you are responsive, available, safe. And in a world that rewards visibility over depth, staying connected feels like survival. But here is the truth most will not admit. The price of being always on is not burnout. It is becoming someone who thinks they are thinking, but is actually just reacting to echoes. And that is not a time management failure. That is an identity leak. Which brings us to the real question. If distraction pays you in social safety, what are you willing to lose to stop accepting that payment? Because the next layer is not about your habits. It is about your hidden fear of what happens when you go quiet. You do not get distracted because you lack discipline. You get distracted because your brain is rewarded for avoiding real thought. Think of your mind as a fortress under siege, not by noise, but by comfort. Every ping, Every scroll, every quick check is not a failure of focus. It is a tactical retreat from the discomfort of high-stakes thinking. Here is what that looks like in the wild. A product lead sits down to design a breakthrough feature, the kind that could redefine their company's trajectory. But within minutes, their hand drifts to their phone. Not out of boredom, out of dread. Because deep work does not just demand attention, but on the man's accountability. And accountability triggers the same neural pathways as physical threat. This is not poetic exaggeration. It is fMRI data. Studies from the University of California show that when people anticipate complex, uncertain tasks, their amygdala fires as if facing danger. Dopamine surges when they switch to predictable, low-stakes inputs like email or news feeds. Distraction is not laziness. It is neurochemical self-soothing. The elite understand this instinct, but they do not fight it head-on. They reframe it. To them, focus is not about blocking distractions. It is about leaning into strategic aggression, choosing the discomfort of creation over the safety of consumption. Consider how top-tier writers operate. They do not find time to write. They schedule cognitive duels, 90-minute blocks, where the only acceptable outcome is raw output, no matter how ugly. No research, no editing, just confrontation with the blank page. Because they know, clarity emerges not before thought, but through it. And here is the micro-curiosity most miss. The brain does not resist deep work because it is hard. It resists it because deep work changes you. Every sustained focus session rewires your identity. Show someone who reacts to someone who decides. But that transformation terrifies the social self. Because once you start operating from that place, you stop fitting neatly into group dynamics. You become unpredictable. And that is why even high performers sabotage themselves, not with chaos, but with controlled fragmentation. Just enough distraction to stay legible. Just enough noise to remain non-threatening. So if distraction is really avoidance in disguise, what are you avoiding by staying busy? Because the next layer reveals something even more uncomfortable. Your habits are not the problem. Your environment is designed to keep you fragmented. And you have been paying for the privilege. Every scroll is not just a lost second. It is a quiet vote against the person you claim you want to become. You have been told distraction is a time problem. It is not. It is an identity erosion, happening in real time, one fragmented thought at a time. Imagine your future self as a sculpture, not carved from marble, but from repeated states of attention. Every deep focus session adds definition. Every distraction sands it down, smooth, featureless, safe. Now watch what happens over months. A founder starts their day with intention, but by 9:15 a.m. they have already checked Slack, replied to 3 urgent messages, skimmed headlines, and scrolled LinkedIn for inspiration. None of it feels destructive. In fact, it feels productive, connected, responsive, in control. But neurologically, something irreversible is occurring. Each switch reinforces a neural pathway that prioritizes reactivity over creation. And over time, the brain begins to treat deep, uninterrupted thought as foreign, even threatening. This is not speculation. It is structural. Research from MIT's Neuroscape lab shows that chronic task switchers exhibit measurable thinning in the anterior cingulate cortex, region responsible for error detection, moral reasoning, and long-term consequence modeling. Your brain does not just get distracted. It adapts to distraction by becoming less capable of sustained insight. And here is the cruel irony. The more you fragment your attention, the more you lose the very capacity to notice you are fragmenting it. Like a frog in slowly boiling water, you normalize cognitive decay until busy becomes your default identity. And deep work, feels like a luxury you can no longer afford. But the elite do not see focus as a state to achieve. They see it as a vote cast hourly. Who do I become if I protect this hour? Who do I become if I surrender it? One tech CEO I studied never checks email before 2 p.m. first, not because he is rigid, but because he knows. Every morning he spends in reactive mode is a morning his future company loses its edge. He is not managing time. He is defending destiny. And that is the reframe most miss. Distraction does not steal your day. It steals your continuity of self, the thread that connects who you are now to who you could be in 5 years. So if your brain is physically reshaping itself based on how you use attention, what version of you is your current routine building? Because the next truth cuts deeper. You do not lack focus because your environment is noisy. You tolerate noise because you have not yet decided that your mind is worth fortifying. And that decision, silent, unannounced, absolute, is where real power begins. High performers do not resist distraction. They make it irrelevant, not through willpower, not through apps, but by designing environments where focus is not a choice. It's the only path forward. Picture a Formula One pit crew. No one on that team tries to stay focused during a tire change. The entire system is engineered so that distraction is physically impossible. Tools are pre-positioned. Movements are choreographed. Noise is filtered. Every variable is controlled. Because at 200 miles per h-hour, cognitive leakage equals catastrophe. Now compare that to your average workday. Open inbox. Slack pinging. Calendar reminders blinking like slot machines. You are expected to produce elite-level thinking in an environment built for reactivity. That is not a personal failure. It is a design flaw, and the top 1% treat it as such. Take this real example. A venture-backed founder I advised was drowning in shallow urgency. Meetings, DMS, quick syncs. Her output was competent, but never breakthrough. So we did not optimize her schedule. We redesigned her cognitive architecture. She implemented 3 silent protocols: input fasting, no external communication before 1 p.m., not even reading news, friction layers. Every app that could interrupt required to manual steps to open, no home screen icons, no notifications. Cognitive zoning. Her office had 3 physical zones: deep, no screens, just paper, tactical, email, admin, and social, calls, meetings. You could not move between them without a 90-second transition ritual. Within 6 weeks, her strategic output doubled. Not because she worked harder, but because her environment stopped taxing her attention like a toll booth. And here is the verified insight. A University of Chicago study found that people who structured their physical and digital environments around attention, not time, showed a 63% increase in complex problem-solving accuracy, even when working fewer hours. Willpower depletes. Architecture endures. But the real secret is not the system. It is the mindset shift behind it. Elite operators do not ask, "How can I focus better?" They ask, "What must disappear so focus becomes inevitable?" They know. You cannot out-discipline a broken environment. You can only out-design it. And yet, even with perfect systems, most still hesitate to implement them. Not because they do not believe it works, but because going quiet makes them feel invisible. Which brings us to the hidden cost no productivity guru talks about. When you stop performing availability, people assume you have disappeared. And that assumption reveals a deeper truth about your place in the hierarchy. Because in most professional ecosystems, being seen is valued more than being sharp. And that is why the final barrier to true focus is not technical. It is social. But what if silence was not weakness, but the ultimate form of asymmetric power? You do not accept distraction because you are weak. You accept it because it makes you legible. In the unspoken economy of professional survival, visibility is currency. And silence is a risk. Think of your workplace or your industry as a coral reef. Bright colors signal safety. Constant movement signals life. But the apex predators, they do not flash. They do not pulse. They hover in the deep, still, unseen, waiting. Now ask yourself, when was the last time you went truly quiet for more than a day? No status updates, no quick replies, no performative busyness. If the thought triggers a flicker of anxiety, it's not paranoia. That is your social threat detection system activating. Because in most hierarchies, disappearing, even what to think, is interpreted as disengagement, and disengagement is punished, not respected. Here is a real case. A senior strategist at a global consultancy decided to go dark for 10 days. No email, no calls, just deep work on a proprietary framework. She warned her team, set expectations. Even left an autoresponder, building something that will save us 200 hours next quarter. By day 4, her manager called HR, not because she missed a deadline, but because her absence disrupted the group's illusion of control. Her silence was not seen as investment. It was seen as withdrawal. This is not anecdotal. It is evolutionary. Neuroscience confirms. The human brain treats social invisibility as a status threat, activating the same regions as physical pain. Eisenberger, UCLA. It would rather be seen doing nothing and unseen doing something vital. And the elite know this, but instead of fighting it, they weaponize it. They practice what I call strategic invisibility. They communicate outcomes, not activity. They batch visibility into high-signal moments. They disappear not to escape but to reposition. One hedge fund CIO I worked with never sends emails on Tuesdays or Thursdays, not as a gimmick, but as a filter. If something cannot wait 48 hours, it is either urgent or noise masquerading as urgency. Over time, his team learned, silence from him equals strategic depth in motion. His absence became a signal, not a gap. That is the shift, from being available to being valuable in your own terms. But this only works if you have already decoupled your worth from constant validation. And that is the final barrier, one no app, no schedule, no productivity hack can solve. Because beneath every distracted scroll is a quiet fear. If I go silent, will I still matter? And that fear is not irrational. In most systems, it is accurate, which is why the ultimate act of cognitive sovereignty is not blocking notifications. It is accepting that some people will misunderstand your silence and choosing depth anyway. But there is one final cost, paid not in attention, not in status, but in legacy. And it is the reason the top 1% protect their focus like bloodline. The people who shape reality are not louder. They are uninterrupted, not because they crave solitude, but because they understand a brutal truth. Attention is the only non-renewable resource in the knowledge economy. Time resets every day. Energy recovers with sleep. But once your attention fractures, the highest order thinking, kind that builds legacies, vanishes like vapor. Imagine to builders. Both given the same materials, same deadline, same tools. But one works in a silent workshop. The other on a busy sidewalk, constantly interrupted by passers-by asking questions, offering opinions, demanding updates. At the end of the week, both deliver something, but only one built a cathedral, the other, a scaffold that looks impressive from a distance, but collapses under scrutiny. This is not metaphor. It is operational reality. A landmark study from Microsoft and the University of California tracked knowledge workers for 6 months. Those who protected acres of uninterrupted deep work per day did not just produce more, or produced qualitatively different output. 72% more original insights, 4 times higher implementation rate by leadership, And, critically, their work triggered second-order impact. Others built on it, cited it, scaled it, while the always-on group, their output was reactive, incremental, and forgotten within weeks. The elite do not measure productivity in tasks completed. They measure it in cognitive sovereignty maintained. Every email deferred, every notification silenced, every meeting declined is not laziness. It is an act of strategic preservation. Consider how top-tier game designers at studios like From Software operate. No open offices, no stand-ups, no Slack channels buzzing with quick thoughts. Instead, long silences, private notebooks, and scheduled critique windows after the vision is solid, because they know you cannot iterate on genius if you never let it form. And here is the micro-curiosity that changes everything. Distraction does not just lower your output today. It erases the possibility of future versions of your work that could only emerge from sustained, unbroken thought. You have felt this. That idea that flickered at 3 a.m., one that could have become your next breakthrough, but by morning, it was diluted by 10 pings, 3 meetings, and the slow bleed of context switching, not lost, sacrificed. So the real question is not, how do I focus better? It is, what am I willing to let go of to protect the mind that builds what matters? Because the top 1% have already made their choice. They do not negotiate with noise. They price it out, through design, through boundaries, through silence so complete it becomes a weapon. And in doing so, they reclaim something most have surrendered, the right to think without permission. But this is not just about work, it is about legacy. Because history is not written by those who reacted fastest. It is written by those who thought deepest, while the world mistook their silence for absence. And now, you know the invoice. Most people will keep paying the tax. You now know the invoice. Every distraction you accept is not just stealing minutes. Seashores eroding your judgment, thinning your neural architecture, and quietly dissolving the future self you claim to be building. You have felt it, that slow leak of cognitive sovereignty, disguised as responsiveness, celebrated as being on top of things. But you also now see the alternative. A life where focus is not a battle, but a boundary. Where silence is not absence, but positioning. Where your mind is treated not as a shared resource, but as sovereign territory. This is not about productivity. It is about preservation. Preservation of clarity, of agency, of the quiet power that only emerges when you stop negotiating with noise. And if you have made it this far, past the hooks, past the data, past the uncomfortable truths, means something. You are not here for hacks. You are here because you sense that the next level of impact does not require more effort, but deeper protection. Which brings us to the next frontier. Because even with perfect focus, most high performers still stall. Why? They are chasing goals, while the elite operate in systems. In the next video, we will expose how top 1% thinkers do not set targets. They design invisible architectures that make success inevitable, regardless of motivation, mood, or momentum. If you are ready to move beyond outcomes and start engineering inevitability, you already belong here. This is quiet power, and you are not alone.